welcome back to part 2 in this 5-part series on the advanced techniques for the treatment of acute diseases and epidemics. Is that our summary?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. If you missed the first one, grab the first one so that this will make sense. In this one, we're going to talk about, briefly touch upon prevention before we look at the first phase of acute infection, right? And so in terms of prevention, at the moment, what is popular is vitamin C, zinc, echinacea, and immune herbs. Right? That's kind of that's where our profession is at as Western herbalists, more or less. Is that correct?
Yep,
yeah.
So.
Immune herbs, but immune herbs are vast. It's overwhelming. There's so many immune herbs. Which immune herbs should you use, and why? And do you use, do you use echinacea for everything as a preventative? Or, when do you use echinacea and when do you use, astragalus or Bicol skullcap? They're all immune herbs, right? And same with all our fever herbs and all these sorts of things, right? Which ones do we use and why? So the tradition is that we use, in prevention, we use 2 classes. The tradition is the primary class of prevention is about immunological adaptogens, not herbal antibiotics, right? And so these herbs are sweet flavoured herbs that have complex bidirectional actions that don't mess with anyone too much, and that they don't deplete the body's reserves by opening up the channels of elimination when you don't want to be eliminating. So we're not using herbs like Bicol skullcap or Andrographis in the preventative phase. This is not what any tradition suggests, right? This is not how it goes.
And this is because the principle that we're trying to imbibe into the body here is more a sort of bolstering, tonifying principle rather than immune herbs that shift the nature of the body or the nature of the disease too much in one direction.
Immune herbs is meaningless in herbal medicine. It's meaningless. It's a concept that is not helpful for the practice of herbal medicine. So you need to get rid of it, I would say. It's like girly herbs.
Yeah.
They're girly herbs. It's like, come on, we need greater specificity than that. So immune herbs is not a language for us, right? We can't do that, right? And so, and the reason why we don't use some of those other ones is that, again, we need the language, but they have complex metabolic actions. They have a nature that is described often as very cooling and draining. In some people, it will undermine their digestive strength. In a range of people, it could reduce microbial diversity, their probiome. And the basic function of it is that it has Andrographis or barberry or high doses, like full doses of golden seal, or these herbs, they drain. And what we want to do is bolster and strengthen, right? Yeah. And we want foods that we can give to we want medicines that act like foods, and that you can give them to babies and old people, and whatever constitution you encounter. Weak digestion, strong digestion, all sorts of stuff. And overall, it's just like strengthening you up, right? Did that make sense?
Yeah, that's
okay.
Clarification. And
so the flavour of those herbs generally has a sweet component. And so the reason why they have a sweet component is that they can have glycoproteins. They have starchy aspects. What else is the biochemistry? They have a sweet component, and they have a nourishing, bolstering action. And so herbs that have a sweet component, the primary one that's used in this capacity in China and in SARS, that's when I did my internship in Beijing. I was there for SARS. This is COVID. The primary one for SARS and COVID that has this flavour is astragalus, right? And so it's sweet. If you haven't had it, it's sweet. You can put it in chicken soup and cook it up, right? It's yummy, and it has a broad action upon gut-based immunity and immunological adaptation and resilience. Now, our Western equivalent of this, and that's wonderful. We have access to astragalus. You should use it. It's perfect, right? But because I love our tradition, then the traditional herb that really stands out here for us is Angelica. Angelica archangelica. Now, the name itself, you probably recall when you learnt about it. Where did it get its name? It got its name because angels revealed it to us during the plague, right? That's the story about Angelica Archangelica, that it was so beneficial that one of the King Henrys publicly released, the secret knowledge of how to produce Angelica water, right? Plague waters from using it. Now, we didn't historically, technically get it revealed by angels, I don't think. We learned it from the Sami people, and they're resilient, hardy folk, and it's their central herb, right? And so Angelica Archangelica has a sweet flavour. You used to be able to buy candied Angelica, in the same way that you bought, licorice and marshmallow and things like that. Candied Angelica was a thing. It has a sweet component. Obviously, it doesn't taste bad. No one ever sold candied wormwood, right? No one ever. They sold candied Angelica. It has a sweet component, and it bolsters the vital functions of the body in a broad and complex way. And it has a background of being slightly warming. It has a slight pungent flavour, sweet and pungent, right? It's particularly active on the lungs, and so up in the chest, up in this area, and the gut. And it's used for phlegmy kind of things like this. So anyway, that's Angelica Archangelica is our primary one. Adding to that, then the herbs that are also from this category, we can think of elecampane. We could think of new herbs like cordyceps from China, which has this bidirectional function. And the same from East Asia that we're now using a lot of is Japanese knotweed, right? You could include licorice in there, in that mix. What other herbs do I speak of in this category? Have I missed any?
Bayberry?
Bayberry. Bayberry is a different one, but it's on my list in this area. Bayberry is it's less sweet. It has only a slight sweetness to it, a spicy astringency to it, and it has a stimulant quality to it as well. But it can be used at this particular phase. And so these are these sweet tonic kind of herbs like astragalus that are primary in prevention. And whilst we're on the Western tradition, another one that needs to be included there that's actually different is laurel, bay laurel. And so it's sacred to Apollo. It was used in pestilence. Apollo is one of the gods of plagues, right? And we used it in a whole range of different plagues. It grows all over the place, and it has a warming, immune-stimulating, complex action, and specifically helps with lymph nodes as well. And lymph on the chest is one of the great things about it. So that's another one that goes in there. But more broadly, we're looking at sweet. Now, the thing that comes out of the Chinese experience is that rather than just putting your 4 favourite immunological adaptogens inside there, which is a good approach, right? And you could include a whole range of other similar ones that go inside there as well, is that the Chinese developed this strategy through previous epidemics that they've been rehashing with COVID, that's inside this flagship formula called the Jade Windscreen. And the Jade Windscreen creates like a jade screen, like a lady would get changed behind, that stops the wind from getting in. And the wind is what carries infectious diseases. It's like your wind, my wind, the breath, the germs and all that sort of stuff, right? Creates a screen around you to stop it getting in. And the core principle behind this is the combination of those immunological qi, tonic, sweet herbs, plus dispersing antiviral herbs that open up the channels. Because by the time you realise that you need early stage treatment, it's too late, you've already got it. So we see this with COVID, right? Is that people are getting sick, they're contracting it, and then they're spreading it for 4 or 5 or however many days without symptoms. During that time, that's early stage treatment. And so we want to combine it with these antiviral herbs, these dispersing antiviral herbs. And so in here, then probably my favourite, although we're not meant to play favourites with herbs, is elderflower. It's an amazing herb. You know the way the flower looks, like it's an umbelliferae kind of, it does that. It opens up all of those pores.
Yes.
In every cell, it opens up all of those pores, all those little channels, and it opens up the skin, and it's antiviral, right?
And there's another side there to the wind piece, which is constriction.
Yes.
And we know that when we encounter wind, there's a bodily constriction.
Yes.
And so elderflower, as you were saying to me before, has a way of releasing and opening.
Dilating
And dilating that
and
constriction.
opening, that's right.
Yeah.
Keeping those channels open so that through that early phase of when there's metabolic wastes happening through the immunological fight, that they can be eliminated, right? The focus was always on the pores of the skin, get someone to sweat. And so modern researchers may look and find that that's not literally true, that is necessary. But it's that if you can get someone to sweat, you've triggered a whole range of other mechanisms in the body at the same time, down to the cellular level. And so that getting someone to sweat is what we can focus upon, even if it's not scientifically and literally true, as the clinical sign that we're looking for, right? And the herbs that do that do more than just sweating. They do a lot more than just sweating, yeah? Yeah,
because sweating is like a manifestation of the principle of opening.
That's right.
So there can be many different manifestations, but the principle that we're trying to get to here through our herbs is that opening and that dispersing.
That's right. So you have tonifying herbs with dispersing herbs. And so elderflower is one that I've given. And so these are all the diaphoretic herbs. This is what diaphoretic herbs are. And so we've got, you know, fill in the blanks, fill in your favourite. There's so many of them, right? You could do catnip, right? And it's a cooling diaphoretic. We could do yarrow, you know, a little stronger yet. We could use skullcap. We could, generally, these are often the ones that I would be thinking of first in the broad preventative measures. But there are also, as we look later on, we'll see there's a whole bunch of other spicy ones that we could look at as well. Have we covered what we need to on the prevention?
Yeah.
Yeah, so early treatment is prevention, right? Prevention is early treatment, it bleeds across. But then once you get the first signs, then the first phases of COVID or of any infection are where it's at the periphery. It's at the least important tissues of the body, right? And so what that looks like is often a cold, like a chill, goosebumps. You could have a runny nose. You could have an aversion to cold, and you just can't get warm enough, and you just feel like you need to get warmer all the time. You could also start to get a bit stiff, just a little bit stiff, a little headachy or something.
And there's that constriction.
Cold constricts. It constricts all the pores, constricts all the channels, constricts the muscles, right? Everything all tightens up a little bit when it gets cold. Vasoconstriction takes place. All of those things happen under cold. So you have those signs, and you could get a little bit of signy with the you know, all that sort of stuff, right? So that's some of the first signs and symptoms of when you're just getting, when it's on the wind. You've got it on the wind. It's brought to you like malaria, right? Which is mal, like malevolent, bad, and air, as in air. Malaria, everything was malaria back then. It was all brought on the winds. So that's one of the aspects of wind, is that you get it through airborne diseases, perhaps.
And you've got mentioned that this, because it's cold constriction, are we going to be using some of our warming opening medicines as well?
Yes, so you can. So when at the first phase, generally, like Thompson said, it's not always the case, but often the most superficial is a cold constriction. And so at that point, that's where we want to use warming diaphoretics, right, when we can really see. And so we can see that it's a cold constriction by those clinical symptoms that I outlined for you. You've got a cold. It looks like a cold. Doesn't look like a flu, doesn't look like a fever. There's a cold, right? So you get that. It's not that complicated. But the clinical signs that you could add to that is that they're not sweating. So if you can see that they're not sweating, then we've got confirmation that warming diaphoretics are well indicated, right? If they're already sweaty, then that's not what we're focused on.
So that's a key differentiation.
That's right.
If they're sweaty,
yes,
it means that there's
it's already progressed a little bit further in its heat.
And we want to use cooling
that's right.
If they're not quite breaking that sweat, but you can see the signs of a cold, then we want to warm up the body.
That's right. Open the pores.
Okay.
So just the absence of the presence of sweat, along with some of those other aches and pains and bits and pieces that we talked about. So that's the first sign that it's at the outside. And so then we've got all sorts of different things. Anything that will generate warmth and open the pores. And so we've got a whole range of spices, right? We could use cinnamon and clove at this point. Cayenne, which was Thompson's favourite, right? It's like when I was first starting with herbal medicine, I remember when I would get sick, I would often go and have cayenne in stock in the bath, and maybe with some garlic, and just sit there in the bath until I got a little bit of a sheen.
You wouldn't put
going.
actually cayenne in the bath.
Not in the bath water, no. Don't do that. Bad idea. Really dangerous.
Yeah.
Drinking it whilst in the bath, and then when you get that first break, then you go and wrap up in a sheet and go and lie in bed, and you sweat it out. So, so we've got spicy things can do that. We've also got sulfur-based medicines, and so that's the sort of garlic, onion, horseradish, those stinky, pungent bits. And you can use all of those with a good dose of it. Will bring you out in a little bit of a sweat at this in this phase, right? But because this is actually really, really simple, because any hot drink will open the pores and can bring you out in a sweat anyway, right? If you, potentially. So we don't have to be too fussy. This is the easiest phase to treat, because even if something is cooling potentially, then when it's in a hot tea, it can still have this action of opening the body, right? And so any hot drink at all can be used like this. And what does that open up for us? That opens up all sorts of different warming herbs that aren't in this category. And so if you've just got thyme, if you've got hyssop, if you've got things that are actually used for other patterns that are deeper, lung herb stuff that are warming, and that's what you've got oregano and marjoram in the kitchen, right? Those things can all be made as a hot decoction and then to be drunk, and you'll sweat.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. So, in summary, is there anything else?
No, I think that's...
In summary, kind of beyond prevention, then the most superficial sort of layer that an infectious disease is going to penetrate, we're going to start to see that wind constriction, most likely cold. And if it's gone a little bit further, then there'll be the beginnings of a fever, but it's not quite the hot febrile state, which we'll talk about next.
That's right, yes. So the first bit, it's a cold.
Yeah.
It feels like a cold.
Yeah.
And we want to stop it there.
Yeah.
And we can we use those herbs, and all those herbs have antiviral and antimicrobial properties to them, right? And so you can study, elderflower, in a laboratory in this particular way. They have those actions, but they don't just have those actions. We need to see the dynamics as well. They have a lot of different actions. They affect every cell in the body in some way. And in talking about how they affect it, rather than just killing bacteria, we could say antiviral means we know what it does to viruses, kills viruses. But what does elderflower do to a living organism, a living animal?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where we introduce this language.
Yes.
It opens up all of the channels and all the pores in a way, right? And so we use it at this stage when that's what we really need to do, is open it up. So that's the first layer. It's the layer of wind. Yeah. Great. Join us for the next layer.